try to. Everyone, we want to welcome Janna Bennett. She is a curator from the Carnegie Museum. It used to be the old library. And she's going to do a veteran program for us.
Thank you, Nellie. Hello, and thank you for having me this evening. Show of hands, I won't make you stand up and do your whole report, but those of you who were in the military service, for any in the room, thank you for your service. The Carnegie Museum for a long time has had a military area where we try to tell the stories of some people around the world. We had an intern in 2022 from Wabash College who is also in the National Guard and redid the gallery that we have right now. So if you haven't been over to see it, I'll share a couple of those stories with you today. Otherwise, I'm happy to have you come over and take a look yourself. So some of the things that I have here, I wanted to give a little sort of potpourri of things that are going on. So just little stories and then maybe a few big stories at the end. Thanksgiving menus here from USS Mississippi in 1918 versus Belgium, 1944. A much fancier printed menu for 1918 versus a mimeograph copy from 44. We have the Belgium map or menu from Max Johnson with his Company C of 926 signals. He was a radio operator. These escape and invasion maps, which I've also put out here if you've never seen them in person, they're kind of cool. They've often been called silk escape maps, but they're actually not made out of silk. They're made out of a rayon material. Still soft and silky, which is why people have thought that they were made out of silk. The ones that we have are all from World War II and are all from the Pacific Theater. Rationing also happened in the Army, although not, of course, the same things that were rationed here in the States. Lots of soap and gum and candy, razor blades, beer and cigars. We also have these from Max Johnson, who saved these in a scrapbook for us. And James Hardaway, also known as L, was in the 808 Engineers, spent quite a bit of time in the South Pacific, including a good period of time in Australia, which I thought was interesting that this envelope, there were enough people coming from living in Australia during the war that they had a special envelope printed. I thought that was interesting. And there's a picture of L there on the side. Sort of the piece de resistance of the collection is the 3rd Battalion 139th Field Artillery flag, which was given to the museum in 2015. The Field Artillery Battalion originated as part of the 4th Indiana Infantry and saw its first service in the Spanish-American War in 1898. It then rejoined and the group was sent to World War I, but they didn't arrive until after the armistice was signed, so they didn't see service in battle. The group demobilized in 1919 and reformed again in 1922 as a part of the Indiana National Guard. Battery B was in Crawfordsville. Following World War II, in 1947, a service battery was stationed in the Darlington Armory. Dee Wright Thornburg, which I don't know if anybody knows her, was instrumental in raising the funds to have the flag conserved, taken off the door that it had been on, and then framed. So some of the stories we feature in the exhibit are Roxy Remley, who's done a audio and video remembrance, which is available on Delhi's website. Was in part of the Women's Army Corps, which was from 1943 to 1978, when all service members then became one unit. So the only way you could serve prior to being a nurse, which was sort of its own special category, was to then be part of the Women's Army Corps. Remley was a Darlington graduate who in 42 enlisted and assigned to work in the radar equipment. And this is the emblem from the Army Corps. Mary J. Grimes, Colonel Grimes was in the Women's Army Corps Basic Training, 2nd Battalion Commander at Fort McClellan, Alabama. She passed in 2000 and is in Oak Hill. Some of the stories we haven't done is good job recording. So this is where I say, if you ever give something to a museum, be sure you can give them all the information that you know and give them resources. This came in very early in the museum's history in 2009, and it's a dog tag for Deborah Funk. And that's all I know about it. I haven't done a lot of research. I didn't come over and use all of Delhi's databases, so I can't tell you more than that. But I can say, anytime you know something that's not on a museum label, please let somebody know. We are always appreciative of additional information that you can provide. So men in the service who are featured in the exhibit. This first one you may know, Robert Lee Pugh, the corporal who was captured in 44 and liberated 7 months later in 45, is held as a prisoner of war in German camps, and he wrote into his experience in the long journey into hell, which I know Delhi has several copies of. You may also know this iconic image of Joe Rosenthal's image from, I hate that it keeps flipping on and off on you. The Marine Corps image from the 5th day of the Battle of Iwo Jima. It actually has to do with Phil Ward, a local Crawfordsville, and he's there right with the flagpole coming up over his head. As Company 2nd Battalion, 28th Marines were on patrol of 40 when they originally summited the mount. And when they planted that flag, they heard a roar of sound from troops in the battlefield and horns from the boats on the land and the ships at sea, and it really became, after the 5th day of battle for Iwo Jima, a really powerful moment for the folks who were on the battlefield. This is my brief research into these 5 Civil War generals, and I hope that one of you can explain to me better how one of these generals applies to Montgomery County, because I can't figure out that one of them really ever lived in Crawfordsville. So I look forward to hopefully learning from one of you. Oops, I forgot that I didn't do individual pictures. So the first one here on the left is Edward Canby, and actually let's just back up and say, how many people already know everything about the generals from the Civil War? Oh, great, well, then nobody will know if I'm telling it wrong. So, unusual that in the Civil War there were 5 generals associated with Montgomery County. And there's a new book on the Civil War generals of Indiana, which is available in the Carnegie gift shop if you're interested in learning short histories about all of them. Edward Canby moved to Crawfordsville from Kentucky with his father, who was also a member of the Indiana General Assembly. Canby attended Wabash before he headed to the U.S. Military Academy, also known as West Point. He was a career Army officer, served in Florida, Arkansas, the Mexican-American War, and then spent time in the Western Territories, Utah and New Mexico. He, during the Civil War, kept Confederate forces away from the train tracks as they were going down through Tennessee, and so he was instrumental in keeping the roads or the trains to Alabama and Atlanta going. After the Civil War, he went back to the West and would command the Department of the Pacific in 1873. He was assassinated by negotiators of the Modoc tribe during peace negotiations. He is the only officer killed in the Indian Wars. The second one, John Hawkins, is the second picture in, is the one that I can't see that he was related, he himself, through Montgomery County. He has a connection through his sister, and he worked closely with Edward Canby, and I think that's the greatest connection that there is. Hawkins was born in Indiana, was also a West Point graduate. His elder sister, Louisa Hawkins, married Edward Canby. His mother, Mrs. John, I believe it is his mother, Mrs. John H. Hawkins, cared for David Wallace's three boys, William, Edward, and Lou, in Covington, Indiana, upon the death of his first wife. In 1864, he commanded a brigade of the U.S. colored troops in the District of Northeastern Louisiana. He was instrumental in the assault that would become the successful resulted capture of Mobile, Alabama. He continued to serve in the Army and retired at the rank of Brigadier General in 1892. So he's related by marriage to Canby and presumably played with Lou as a child, but that's all I could discover. So if anybody finds something to different, do you?
Lane Planks has information on all five of those.
I am sure they do, yes. And some part of that information that I drew from information through Tom and Larry at Lou Wallace. So the middle character there is Mahlon Mason. In 1842, he moved to Montgomery County, became a druggist in Crawfordsville. He volunteered to serve in both the Mexican-American War and the Civil War. He was a friend of Lou and helped raise the Montgomery Guards, and being a Democrat, Governor Morton, who was not a Democrat, appointed him captain of the Guards, which was quickly mustered into the 10th Indiana Infantry under Wallace. Once he left the service, he turned to politics and served in the U.S. House of Representatives and was the 20th Lieutenant Governor of Indiana from 1885 to 1886. In town, he served as the director of the Citizens National Bank and was a trustee of Purdue University. The fourth gentleman, William Morgan, also attended Wabash and became a businessman in Crawfordsville. He joined the 10th Indiana Volunteer Infantry and joined McClellan's Western Virginia campaign. In the 25th Indiana Infantry, he was a lieutenant colonel in General Grant's army in Kentucky. After Shiloh, he guarded the railroads as well. Then, of course, Lou Wallace, and I hope that everybody at least knows a little bit about this Renaissance man. He would eventually settle in Crawfordsville after marrying Susan Elston, in the home of Henry Lane, is my understanding. Met her there, right. Right, met her there. And the connection there was Wallace's former commander was Henry Lane from the Mexican-American War. The last item I have for you today is, has anybody heard of the GAR? You've probably seen the stars in some cemeteries in the military section, they're sort of this big, and it almost looks like one of those crimping irons that you make cookies with. The Grand Army of the Republic started in 1866 in Illinois, and it was a fraternal organization of people who really, of servicemen from the Union armies who really wanted support after the war. The organization continued until 1956 at the death of its last member. It was a influential political group, and when you think about some of the work to have veterans' rights throughout in government work throughout the last half of the 1800s, they were really responsible for a lot of that. There was a women's corps, Women's Relief Corps. So if you saw service or did work on the home front, that was something that you could also then become a member of. So it's a lot of fun listening to the GAR encampments. They would go locally, which is probably what this is from. It has, waiting. No, it's not gonna do it for me. There it is. Real quick. That center section has 3 heads of Montgomery County generals. And then Lou Wallace, I think, is the one who's at the bottom in that center section. So that's what I have for you on the stories from the Carnegie Museum.
Janna, I thought I'd let you know, we have quite a few records for the Grand Army of the Republic in the archives. And actually, we've got 7 books scanned on our library website where a person can go to them, download them, and view them from home.
Cool. Thank you for that work.
There was a national GAR encampment here.
Was there?
I think about 1912, maybe.
I think that's what this is from. Yeah. Okay.
Lou Wallace was a speaker. They used Boy Scouts to help the old people around.
Great. Well, I wanted to tell you a couple of things that are coming in the next year in case you have an interest or you have information for me. In February, I'm opening an exhibit called Montgomery County Then and Now. It is the Crawfordsville Historic Business District and an exhibit about the buildings, what their use has been and what their use is today. So that'll be opening at the last Saturday in February. So if you have favorite buildings or little known tidbits of buildings, I'd love to hear them. In August, we'll be having a big round anniversary for the filming of Hoosiers in New Richmond. And so then you get do you do the exhibit in 25 when it was filmed in 25? Do you open the exhibit in 26, which would have been the 40th anniversary of the debut of the movie? I've decided to avoid all of that by having it from August into the new year in May. So it'll bridge both of those years. So I know Deli has put it out on Facebook a while back and had lots of pictures and some memories come in from that. But if any of you have leads for me and people who might have been in the movie or have memories of that.
My brother Raoul Moore was a carpenter.
Oh, okay.
And he's in the credits.
Cool. All right, I will catch up with you then. Thank you.
You know, there's a New Richmond chatter page on Facebook, and there is another one growing up in New Richmond or something like that.
Okay.
You know, there's a couple that have to do with
New Richmond itself. I hadn't heard of the second one. I will go.
I'll have to look it up to see exactly what it is.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
I was gonna say, at the time, you to ask me about that, and I put request out, I put it on the New Richmond, not the Chatter, but the other one, and I got a good response from there.
Okay, great, great. This was just one last thing, a commemorative coin that was in our collection. I just thought it was kind of fun. And finally, there's my information. If you have anything you'd like to talk to me further about, maybe you'll have to get it from the, get it quick.
If not, I'm gone.
All right, thank you all.